thank you all for coming. Really appreciate that. I know that Chris is in auditorium right now, so it was a hard decision for most of you probably to choose me. I'm even not sure whom would I choose, so really appreciate it. And I hope that it will be quite interesting and useful. Before I proceed with the slides, I would like to get to know the audience a little bit better, and I have a couple of questions to you. So, are there people who develop Power BI reports, dashboards, applications here? Thank you. Did anyone have experience creating or playing with Deneb Visual before? Cool. And did anyone develop Deneb visuals that are currently in production and heavily used? Cool. That's nice. I have one last question. Do we have anyone who hires people to the projects to work on products? Cool. So I hope that it will be useful for all of you. Now I know you a bit better. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I've been working for 12 years, and all these 12 years I've been working with data and mostly concerned on data visualization topic. I started with Click, then I moved to Tipka Spotfire, and after that I started my very interesting and enjoyable journey with Power BI. Right now I'm fully focused on Power BI for quite some time. And it's quite important. I didn't come to development from like applications development, like many people do, or like front-end development. All the time I was focused on data visualization, and that's why I like Deneb that much. And probably people who has similar like experience will agree with me closer to the end of the session. So what's the agenda? We will discuss some general ideas regarding the Deneb. Then we'll have 3 demos. We'll start with a very simple, very like quick example how to start with Deneb. Then we'll have a more complex one, and we'll consider some interesting topics. And then we will have another one, let's say advanced, with a little bit of magic or workarounds, whichever you would like to call it better. But let's start with why I like Deneb Visual so much. You all probably, like I saw a lot of hands for the people who already have experience with Deneb or Power BI, and who developed Power BI applications probably faced the situation when you can't use the standard visuals, you want to use the custom visuals, and you have to either pay for a custom visual or you download something and you can't actually use it because you can't customize it up to like certain extent, or you start developing something yourself and you might also face some limitations. Here I listed the limitations that I had. It's hard to get some budget from the project to buy a paid custom visual. Then you switch to something like Charticulator. Who has experience creating something in Charticulator? Was it positive? No? Actually, same for me. I have that it's not supported by Microsoft anymore. I should say I was even happy when they announced it, because I tried some webinars, I started learning how to create, but I wasn't able to create anything with it. And I was like, okay, I need to add to my like bucket list or reading list these, and these, and probably somewhere in future I will be able to create my first Charticulator visual that will be used in production. And then I was so relieved when I understood I wouldn't have to do this. We actually have some positive experience working with D3GS visuals. There are some limitations listed on the slide, but I think the biggest limitation is that it's hard to write D3GS code if you don't have development background. If you're a Power BI developer, you probably know how to write SQL, you have some experience with Python, you are expert with DAX, but D3GS is something from like parallel world to you. And this was like that to me. I could make some support, but actually if I wanted to create something new, I was stuck. And again, I had to start reading books, going through some webinars. And I understand that even if I spend like a lot of my free time to learn the technology or the language that I won't be using, if we have a new team member or if I have to hire someone to support this application, it will be even harder than to find a good Power BI developer, which people who raised hand about hiring probably might know that it's not that easy to hire a good Power BI developer right now. And here you have one more criteria, which is like, why should I know D3GS to join your project? So this is how we moved to Deneb. This is how I moved. And for me, there are a lot of classes or process for using Deneb, but I think the biggest one was that I was able to create my first visual within like 1 hour. And my first example will be very similar to this like first visual that I've created with Deneb. And there are a lot of things that are limitations for other custom visuals, but for Deneb, those are things that are quite easy to implement and quite easy to learn how to implement. So I wouldn't read what is written on the slide. I hope that you had the chance to read it. And let's start with a quick custom visual example. I will be switching to some demos here, but let me share some background. So we had a requirement to build a visual which looks something like that. So we have particular dates on x-axis, and we have some categories, and we want to see the events happening at some point of time. And here on this example, you may see that the circles where we had more events are bigger, where we had just one event, we have small dot. And this seems to be quite straightforward, but it was a surprise, or and probably a lot of you faced this, that Power BI scatter plot doesn't allow you to build a visual where the category and category are on X and Y axis. You need a number to be there. And actually, Deneb appeared to be quite a simple solution here. And I would like to start my demos and my lecture with how I started the development here. So I just went to, you may see the first link, the examples library of Vega-Lite. And I think for, I'm sorry I didn't mention it in the beginning, but for the people who didn't work with Deneb before. So this is a custom visual which is built on top of a library called Vega-Lite. And Vega-Lite library is a library built on top of D3GS library. So basically, it's just a library that is wrapped into a custom visual wrapper, let's say. So let me move to the computer and start showing it in real life. So what I started with this examples gallery, and I hope you can see it well. So you can just go and look for different examples of visuals that can be created using this library. And I was able to find this one, which looks pretty similar to what I needed to create. So I just clicked on it, went to scroll down, and here we have a code that I used, and I had to make very small adjustments to this code. So let me go to Power BI and open my quick custom visual example and show you quite quickly what needs to be done. So first of all, we import this Deneb Deneb custom visual, and then in the properties we can go to the edit section. And our edit section, it will ask you to create something from example or from a blank visual, but I usually choose like a blank visual and just copy paste my code snippet here. So we have the code editor, we have the preview of the visual that is going to be created, and we have the table that is created out of the fields dropped into our field box. As you can see, the code here, it is very simple, very straightforward, and it helps us to create like this kind of visual in just few rows of the code. And the code here is not actually the code, as you might see. It's like a JSON commands, let's say, which are quite easy to understand. So let me go back to the slide. And I have a slide like this here. So this is the code snippet from the example that you just saw in Power BI with some explanations. So we have a data source, which is our data set, the fields from the box actually. Next one, we have mark definition. So here we just define its type, its circle. It can be bar, line, circle, text, and many others. I will dive into some details a bit later. Then we have x-axis definition. So like the rest is enclosed into encoding section. So how we encode our mark definition. So x-axis, the source field, which is date, the type, it's ordinal here. It can be nominal, temporal, actually not that many of them, and you can easily navigate through them. The next one is title disabling. So basically, you might already notice that it looks very similar to visualization part in Power BI visualization configuration. So you just go and click something there, and here you do the same, but with comments. So your title is just disabled. The axis definition where we provide the format and the format type. I prefer to set format type to PBI format all the time so that I can use the same like format definition that we usually have in format DAX function. The next one is y-axis definition with the source field and just disabling the title, very straightforward. And then the color and size definition that we only do with the name of the field that is responsible for this. So that's it. That's all we need to create our first visual. And I think that it shouldn't look too complicated. The next slide that I have. So basically, going back, probably let me just go back and let's look at the big picture. So we have the mark, we have the x-axis, we have the y-axis, and we have the mark definition. So this is how most of the Deneb visuals are created. So we have x-axis, we have y-axis, and then we have just mark definition to be like enhanced or defined in a very simple way. And if we look at this diagram with the charts selection, you can see that they all look like that. So we have some axes, we have either bars, either circle, which is our like scatter plot example, or lines, or the combination. So we may combine two or more marks. And we also have text, which is a separate mark. I will focus on it a little bit later. But the idea here that the majority of these charts can be created in this way. You just need to probably think of how the elements will be combined. And this is where we come to my second example. So it is very similar to the previous one. It has a couple of differences. First of all, which is the last on our slide, we have the conditional label here. So let me provide some background of what this visual is. We have some timeline again. We have different projects, and we may see the completion dates, which is like the forecasted completion date, the planned completion date, and the actual completion date. And near the forecast completion date, we want to see whether our project is delayed or whether we are ahead of schedule and how many days the difference is. And we don't want it to be displayed near like every circle. We just need it to be displayed once near the forecast completion date. And together with this example, we will also consider the interaction, which is a big plus of Deneb visual for me, because probably if you tried some Python visuals or even these D3GS, interactivity is not a strong side of those visuals, but for Deneb, it's possible, it works, and it's even quite simple to configure how it works. And the tooltips, which is part of the interactivity, but it's more like straightforward. It's something that you would expect, and it's even easier to configure than the interactivity itself. So let me go to the next slide. Here I have some code snippet. I hope it's visible. So this is our initial definition of the chart. As you might see, it's very similar to previous example in the first section, but the second section is looks a little bit different. Here we have layer, which is the first row in the selected section. And this is a little bit different arrangement of the code, which prepares us for layering the marks. So here we will have more than one mark, and we will need to layer them. So we have this layer definition in order to group different marks together. In this first basic visual, I have just one mark, which is circle again. I have the definition here. And I think the important point that I would like to highlight here is the bottom section where we define color. In previous example, I didn't define any color range. It was just using the default colors. Here I can define the range. Again, it's not like the full definition, because for now it will be just picking the random colors, not quite random. I think it will associate with the data points, probably in alphabetical order, but I don't control which colors are related to specific category. For more complex example, we can bind the color definition with the category definition. So it's also possible, but if you want to just feed some theme, you can use definition like this. So this is basic definition. The most important concept is layer here. And let me, yep.
I have a question about these colors. Is there a way to parse the dynamic color in the custom visual?
Yes. I think that you can use a combination of the Vega-Lite capabilities and also Power BI general capabilities like DAX, or the fields. So you can pass the color as a part of a data set and then just use it as a definition of the color. So let's go back to my example. So we just looked at the code snippet. It's currently the source for this visual. And as you might see, if I click on any of the points here, nothing happens. How can I enable this? So we go to edit section again, and we go to settings. And we have a couple of settings here. So we can choose the library, and let me stop a little bit here. We have two options, Vega-Lite and Vega. I tried both. My favorite is Vega-Lite because it's very simple, very intuitive to develop and learn. But we also have Vega, which is more powerful, but it will take much more time for you to understand how it works. And for me, Vega-Lite was always enough to develop everything I needed. So I decided to stick with it and even not went deeply into Vega. Then we have render mode. I always keep it to SVG because Power BI works very good with SVG. And the last section is our interactivity configuration. So we will stop on two today, the tooltip handler, and the last one, cross-filtering selection of data points. We will need both here, so we just enable them. And let's go to the report and see what happens. So if I hover over the point right now, nothing happens. And this is fine. We didn't configure any tooltips. We just enabled the handler. But if I click on any point here, look at the table below. It already started cross-filtering my table. So that's fine, but that's probably not enough. Let's see how we can configure the rest of the interactivity. So let me go back to my presentation. Sorry, I need to get back. So the tooltip section, we just added as a part of the mark configuration. So it's just a section where we list the fields that we want to be displayed in our tooltip. So here I have 3 fields, date, project, and schedule. I can define the type. I can also, for the date, I can set the format. You already saw this section with the PBI format. And let's look at how it will look on Power BI side. So this is the chart with the interactivity enabled. If I go and hover over, I see these 3 fields already there. What about the selection? So I already spoiled part of another part of interactivity. You can see that when I hover over marks, you see this hand, little hand, which is like a pointer, and you see the stroke appearing around the circle mark. How to enable this? This is not a very complex concept. It's very easy to learn what is possible and what is not. But what I prefer is to scroll this examples library to the interactivity section. Let me find it. It's quite low, but if you scroll enough, you will find it. And we can see what we can do with the which interactions we can actually implement. So I used this one, the first one. So if you can see it, when I hover over, I see the cursor and I see the stroke. If I click on something, I can see that the opacity for the points that are not selected changes. How to implement it? And this is my favorite part. If we scroll down enough, we can see the code for this chart, and it's not very complex. So this part actually gives us the understanding of which data is fed. And then we have this params section introduced. So this params is actually responsible for interactivity. We have 2 interactivity types, which the first one is the point over, and the second one is the selection. So we define these 2 events in the params section. And then when we scroll down, we control the fill opacity for the mark. And here we have, condition section introduction. So it's quite important for Deneb that you can use conditions. You can actually control a lot of things. And in the next example, we will also see how the conditions can be used. But here specifically, in case of the point is selected, we use like the full opacity. If it is not selected, we feed like 0.3 opacity. And if nothing is selected, everything is visible. So it's quite straightforward. If you understand how the condition works, you can enable like any other option here. But it's not the only thing that you can control. There are other things that look very interesting here. I really, if you are interested and if you think that Deneb is something that could be used on your project, I really encourage you to go through these examples to understand how much can be controlled with the interactivity section. I decided not to dive too deeply into this part because it will take more time, but I would like to just show you to prove that it's possible. So here we have this params section, we have this point over. It's just a copy paste from this example, so nothing too specific, and we control the stroke widths here based on the highlight param. And moving to the third example. So you already have some idea of how Deneb Visual allows you to create your custom visuals. And this is, again, an example from my experience. I had a task to create a visual. It was initially created with D3GS. That's why it looks not really Power BI-like or Deneb-like. But we had like CFO person who wanted to export this one-pager to PDF. And for D3GS, it just shown an error. It was not possible. So we've decided to export it to rewrite it with Deneb. I should be honest, this was not an easy exercise. I almost gave up, but I decided to start with what I can do. And I've started with visual that looks like this. So we already introduced the layering. We already introduced the mark types. Which mark types can you spot here? Bars, nice. What else?
The numbers, marks as well.
The percentage, cool. So this is the text marks. This is type of mark text. What about the top section, actual and planned? How do you think it can be implemented? They're marks, they're text marks, but as you can see, they're only displayed once. It's condition. So again, we can use the condition to decide whether to display something or not. I will try to go step by step through how it was created. And in the end, I will also show you how to create this one, and we will have some other interactivity thinking, trying to think together how to implement it. So let's start with just very simple part, defining the axis and creating the first version of the visual. So here I would like to draw your attention to the sort part. So we can have, if we want to sort categories in a specific order, if we have the limited number of categories, we can just manually feed them into this sort section, and we will have the custom sorting inside the visual. The next part is adding a transform section. And this is, here I would like to introduce a new concept, this transform section, which is not that difficult. You can think of it like in DAX, you define the variables in the beginning of the code. So you have this transform section in the beginning of the Vega-Lite definition to define some conditions, let's say. So here I have like the first section is just a logical function that compares my actual value to my planned value. And if its actual is greater than planned, it's true, else it's false, greater or equal. The second one defines the color. It's very similar to the third one, but the colors for amber are a bit different just for visibility purpose. So again, here I just feed the result as a part of my data set. That's why you can see that I check whether it's green or red. You can have more, let's say, less straightforward approaches. You can have your own condition. But the idea is that under the delta label, the resulting value for the color is saved. And then I can reuse it multiple times throughout my code. Okay. I think so. If we're talking about the slicers control which data set is fed into your visual. So for sure they interact with the data set, and then depending on what is selected is fed. If you would like some, I don't know.
I will give you a scenario. So
yeah.
I have a scatter plot, and I select, for example, two values, and I want to highlight these values, not filter them, but highlight.
Okay.
Like in red dot.
Yeah, I think that you still can probably think of passing these through DAX, just as a separate column in the table. Yeah, and then you can conditionally format them. I would explore this area. So, okay, going back to this example. So we have this transform section. Let's say we have 3 variables that contain some result, and we can reuse them throughout the code. The next one is defining the bars. And here I would like to draw your attention to the differences. First of all, we have the description section. I discovered it for myself and I started heavily using it. It's just for yourself to understand what is defined in this section. So I put I define the plan bar, and then when I need to change the code, I scroll and I can see I can quickly understand what's here. It's like a comment for myself. Then we define the marks. The type is similar, the height, and here we have expression. It's another concept that you can use creating your Deneb visuals. So you can calculate something inside your code. You just need to define it as expression, and also you will see it later if we use something from the transform section. We also define it as expression. So here. The bandwidth of y is actually the space that is dedicated for my bar, the full bar. And as you remember, I don't need like the full space here. I need to move my bar a little bit down, and I need to make it smaller. I don't want it to be the full section. So I use this bandwidth. I multiplied it to 0.4. And my actual bar is even smaller, so I just need 0.15 to fit it on top of my planned bar. The order matters, so if my actual bar needs to go, I think, after the planned bar, so that it is on top of it. Then the color, again, for the plan, I want it to be gray, so I leave it static. For the actual, I want it to be of a different color depending on the condition that I have. So here I have my expression, and I just use the delta color from my transform section. The datum is like I think it means that the data set that I have, and this like delta color is added to my data set after I define it. And then another interesting thing, you can see this encoding section for actual bar. It's important because when I put encoding for X, I use the plan. So in order to have different value for my gray bar and for my colored bar, let's say, I need to redefine the X-axis for my actual bar in a separate encoding section. I see some confused faces here. Let me try to rephrase it a little bit. So when we define the axis, sorry, let me go back and explain it on previous example. So here, you can see that I have the first encoding, which defines my y and x axis, and then for the mark, in a layered section, I have a separate encoding. This is because I layer the mark, and different marks in my different layers can have different encoding, as in this example. So I would just have a separate encoding section for my plan bar and say that I need a different field to be used for the source of, as a source of the data for this bar. I would probably pause here, just in case you have some questions left, or more or less clear.
I have one question. What will happen if, for example, in this sort condition, you have another category?
A new category.
You will not add it.
That's a good question. So I should say that for this specific example, we had to confirm with business that the number of categories and the list of the categories will be static. And you will see why, because it's not the one place where it's like hard-coded, let's say. I think that you can use much more, let's say, smarter solution here. I would probably think about adding some sorting column into the data set, or maybe just sort it like using standard Power BI approach and use this column for sorting. But here, the idea was just to move overall on top, and the rest was predefined. And my idea with Deneb, it should be very simple, very straightforward for people not to develop it, but also to support and for future teams that might work over these visuals. So we decided to leave it like that. But it can be improved enormous amounts of time. So, okay, if the rest is clear, let's move forward. The labels. So again, you can see my names of the sections, the plan label, the actual label, and here you can see the text mark, which is something that we already discussed when we defined the marks. We have the alignment. So I should probably explain what's that. So we're defining the 69 and 70, the percentage labels that we have here. So the type is text, the alignment, the actual is to the left, the plan is to the right, but we'll define it a little bit more precise a bit later. Then we have this dy, this is like an offset. I want to move that a little bit higher, not to correspond with my bars. Again, same color definition as you probably saw before. The static one for plan, the dynamic from transform section for actual. And then we have the encoding section for each. So you can see that it's static here. I don't use any field to define where my labels will be positioned. If I would use field, it would always be displayed on the end of the bar. I don't want it to happen. So I put my actual label to the 0 so that it's displayed somewhere here. And then for 70, again, this is quite a simple example. This was a part of a static report, which was like every section was already defined, the size was already defined. So we had the prerogative of hard coding the position of this of this label. But I know, and I tried it a little bit, you can actually get the width of your visual from Deneb, and you can calculate dynamically, you can make it responsive. And if you want to put your label into some specific place depending on the size, it's always possible. It will take more time. It will be probably a bit harder to support. I like that we can put a static number here, because if you have a new report and you want to just reuse this code, you just put a new number, it takes 1 minute, and you don't have to over-engineer this part. So this is regarding the position. So we don't specifically need a field. It can be just a number here. And then we have the text definition. So we have the like where we get the 69 and 70 from specific fields. We define the format. Again, we use PBI format. So hope that it is quite straightforward and don't need further explanation. Now headers. So we already looked at the conditional labels. Here you can see, I won't stop on the previous ones. You can see the offset. You can see the static definition of the position so that it's aligned. And then we have the condition. So the name is the field that is fed into my data set. I can refer it as datum name. And if it equals to overall, I display this plant. So the plant will be only displayed for the overall category. And same I apply for the actual. This should be quite straightforward again. Okay, this is some question.
If it would be possible to add headers as a secondary axis on top of the visual.
Might be, didn't try it, but I should say that it's quite flexible, and if you want to try it, I really encourage you. Actually, I will get back to my first slide. In the end of the section, I had my email there, and if you would like to get the PBIX file with these examples and the presentation, just message me and I will send it to you. Okay, so this is what we need to build the first chart. We defined the axis, we defined the bars, we defined the labels and the headers. That's it. Now, the second one. So I actually explored a lot how to create something like that. I didn't find any idea that how we can control the background of the visuals. And that was the hardest part. I know that Vega allows something like that, but I didn't want to go to Vega. It seemed to be complicated. So I decided to stick with Vega-Lite. And I found a solution. But I don't know, maybe anyone has an idea how it could be created. The stripes in the background. Okay, I didn't expect anyone. I would be really upset if anyone would say the correct answer here, because it costed me probably a week of thinking, maybe less. So I decided to add more marks here, and I decided to add bars as the first layer of the definition. So basically, I added one bar, and this is like, you can see the definition to the right. It has X offset minus 138. So I moved it to the left as possible. And it goes, I'm not even sure how far it goes, but then I added the second stripe bar, which starts with a 0. They are made to be a little bit bigger than it is defined for the general bar, so because the general bar will be quite small, not like for the full category. I just feed my stripes definition. It's again added to the transform section, but it's, as you can see, the list of categories is fixed. So I just defined for specific categories which colors they are. And another thing that, another limitation that I faced is that if I add bars, they are actually overlapping with my labels. So they hide the y-axis labels, the engineer and procurement construction ones. So it was not a problem for me because I could add more marks, and I just added the category as a, I don't know which, maybe 10th definition of the mark. It was quite straightforward now. So as you can see here, I disabled labels for the axis, and I added a new mark of a type text, described it as labels, again moved it minus 135 pixels to the left. And the last one that I would like to, the last point that I would like to highlight is that for labels font, in the transform section for overall, I defined it as bold, for the rest, normal. So if you go back to the example, I was able to make the top section, the overall one, bolded. And that's it. That's how I was able to create this small chart in the bottom that was able to fit into a report that looks like that. This is a mock-up. The real report looked a bit different. I couldn't show you the real financial example. So, but I think the mock-up gives the idea of how it looked in the end. The last section, it's quite fun. Can we make it even easier? So I tried with ChatGPT 3.5. Unfortunately, it doesn't know what Deneb is, but it knows what Vega-Lite is. So if you ask some questions, it will, if you ask, like, write me a visual with Vega-Lite library that looks like this, it will reply you with Python code, but you can ask it to rewrite it in JSON, and it will give you an example that looks like that. You can ask to change some color definition or something like that, and it works perfectly with these simple questions that I tried. So also encourage you to test it. And let me go to the first slide. If you want my email, you can, thank you. You can take a photo, just message me. I will send you the materials. And now we have 15 minutes for the Q&A.
I was working with this Deneb a little bit, trial and error, I would say. And I noticed something, I don't know if I did something wrong. I tried to find the answer, also couldn't. So I had this data set in Power BI that's the visual. And later I want to add some new elements. Like once I build this visual, at the beginning I wanted to add something to this underlying data set. And once I added, the visual for some reason broke. But later when I start over, whole process, copy paste the code, it worked again. So I couldn't understand actually what is the reason, but actually my question would be, is there any like smart way to debug this kind of errors in Deneb?
With errors, I would say for me, it's one of the concepts of the Deneb visual because, for example, when you work with the interaction, and the interaction is great, it's quite straightforward to configure, but if you have some error and it's not working for you, it's quite hard to debug, and it's very hard to understand what's going wrong, why it's not working. So, to be honest, I didn't find a good way of debugging it, but usually like all the errors that I had, apart from this interaction error, are related to the code. So you might leave some, you might forget about some bracket or something like that. I really advise you to use the, it's like a magic wand icon, and it formats your code for you, and it makes it look very like it's like a SQL, DAX formatter, but for JSON, and it's much easier to debug. But I don't know about any like tools and any approaches how to make it easier. I saw some other hands. Yeah.
Yeah, what about performance of such a custom visual?
The performance of Deneb is, for me, is very good. Still, it's a little bit worse than standard visuals. I think that still try to limit the additional calculations inside, try to limit the amount of fields fed, and probably if you can pre-calculate something, just pre-calculate it before feeding there. Also, one more point that I noticed is that Deneb visual starts recalculating after the standard visuals are recalculated. So it looks something like that. But yeah, it's a bit slower, still not critical. I saw some hand there, or it was the same question. Yeah.
And how about the dynamic columns, for example, that I would like to switch between the country and the city in the y-axis?
To be honest, didn't try, but what about the field parameter? So I would expect that it should work with field parameters. But to be honest, never tried.
That was actually a comment to the question about performance, because Power BI calculates everything on the server, right? But Vega is a JSON language, so it calculates on the client whatever it calculates. If you want to offload that to your users, then Vega is the next thing.
Any other questions?
We've got one question online. Maybe you partly answered, yeah? So the question is, how responsive Deneb visuals are? I mean, how do they react to the window resizing?
They are responsive themselves, unless you start hard coding, as I started. If you want to keep them responsive, you'll have to write a little bit more extensive code and a little bit more calculations added to the code. But they are like out of the box. They are responsive, and I think I even can demonstrate. So you remember that this part we have hard-coded the position. The rest we didn't touch any like pixels definition. So if I make it bigger, you can see that everything that was hard-coded, it doesn't play well for us, but the rest is quite responsive. I think I saw one more hand, no? Yes, please.
How does the visual interact with the integration? So if I configure the visual, does the JSON file also goes into the repository, or?
What do you mean by Git integration? So would you like to save?
Yeah, if you save this file as a Power BI project and then you do integration with other methods, for example, for the Git. Usually when you have the Power BI visualizations, you have all the configurations. Is this visualization the JSON from this Deneb also included in this code, or I can only get its code via Power BI desk.
I would expect that it becomes a part of JSON definition of Power BI file, Power BI layout. But to be honest, didn't check.
Second one, if I may. How does this Deneb visualization work in mobile?
It works.
If it's configured for mobile, then it works.
Yeah. Again, I would say that like, don't follow my example of the hard coding. This was not the case in this example, but like to keep the responsiveness and to keep the mobile view, I would say that just leave the default or add the responsiveness manually.
How long did it take you to do this from start to finish?
I would split the two parts. So where is my presentation? So this part took me a couple of days, and then that part took me a couple of hours, but in between, probably 1 week or 1 week and a half passed when I was just going, thinking, and like processing this information inside my head. But yeah, in general, everything, as you evolve, as you start understanding how it works, for me, the biggest discovery was the combination of marks, like that I can combine, I can layer the marks. And then when you need to create a new visual, just think about the decomposition of this visual into specific marks. And if I can go back to the marks definition that they have, and I'm not sure, I think I skipped the telling you about the documentation. So they have a very great library of examples, but they have very straightforward and easy to understand documentation here. And this is the screenshot of the documentation. Sorry, I forgot the word, like agenda, let's say. And here you can see the marks definition. So I said that the majority of visuals can be built out of bar, circle, and line. But for example, we have pie chart. Never had the idea to customize the pie chart. Not sure if anyone had such requirement or necessity, but it's also possible. You can see the first mark type, which is arc, and it's actually created for like pie chart definition. As you can see, we also have the area, we have the box plot, the image, the geo shape. So you can build quite a lot of different visuals using like specific or a combination of marks from here. But you need to understand the concept first, which I not recommend to start with. I really recommend to explore the examples and try to build something based on the examples. It really helps on the first steps. And then you can evolve with reading documentation, understanding more properties that you can configure. But basically, it's just the marks, as I mentioned, and the list of the properties that are that can be configured by definition of this library. Thank you. Any other questions? That's a great question. Never asked it myself. We can think about it together. So basically, thinking about the marks again. So you have the possibility to control the events that happen on the selection. So you can make something bigger or smaller. So I would say that you can arrange this event to happen, but it would cost you a lot of programming and probably a bit overcomplicated. Well, wait, isn't our drilling just a filtering? And filtering is possible. So I think in some way it should be even possible in a straightforward way. No more questions. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming.